IREN stock had another strong day today, closing Wednesday session at $37.90. That was a gain of $1.45, or about 4%, on a day when the broader market was buzzing with news from the Federal Reserve. The Fed delivered a quarter-point interest rate cut, and more importantly, signaled that as much as 75 basis points in cuts could still come later this year. For risk assets, that's fuel on the fire. For a growth story like IREN, with its capital-intensive expansion into AI cloud infrastructure and its deep exposure to Bitcoin mining, it gave investors the green light to push the stock higher. And now, as we look at the aftermarket, we're seeing signs of continued strength, with IREN holding firm and even showing early signs of buyers stepping in after the close. That's something worth noting because it suggests that today's momentum might not be done yet. Let's break this down. First, let's talk about the macro. Rate cuts don't always move every stock the same way, but they almost always help the overall risk environment. Lower rates mean cheaper borrowing costs, which makes it easier for companies to finance growth. Lower rates also put pressure on yields, which sends more money into equities, especially into growth and tech names. And when the Fed signals that more cuts are on the table, it creates a backdrop of supportive liquidity. That doesn't mean everything goes up in a straight line, but it does mean investors feel more comfortable leaning into stories that might have looked riskier just a few weeks ago. For IREN, which is both an AI infrastructure build-out and a crypto mining play, the perception of easier money and more support for growth investments helps validate the bull case. Second, the fundamentals remain solid. Remember, this is a company that just posted record revenue of $187 million in the last quarter, up 228% year-over-year. They flipped from a 27-cent loss per share last year to a 70-cent profit this year. That's a huge turnaround. And that's not just Bitcoin mining. It's the early stages of an AI cloud business that has the potential to be a game changer. Right now, IREN has about 10,900 Nvidia GPUs already live, with another 9,000 Blackwell GPUs secured for delivery. That's nearly 20,000 top-tier chips powering its AI cloud build-out. And they've secured Nvidia preferred partner status, which is crucial. It's one thing to be buying GPUs. It's another thing to be recognized by Nvidia itself as a trusted partner. That helps with supply, it helps with credibility, and it helps with enterprise customer access. That's why so many investors are beginning to re-rate IREN as more than just a miner. On the financing side, management has been proactive. They closed on $200 million in non-dilutive GPU financing, which supports this expansion without issuing a massive slug of new equity. That's another checkmark in the bullish column, because investors know their ownership stake is being preserved while the business scales. Meanwhile, the mining side of the business continues to deliver. In August, IREN mined 668 Bitcoin. That was down slightly from July's 728, and hash rate dipped from about 45 exahash to 44. But hardware profit was still more than $50 million. Yes, energy costs have pressured margins, but mining remains a powerful cash flow generator. That mining engine is what gives IREN the financial foundation to pursue the AI opportunity. Leadership also matters. Anthony Lewis stepping into the role of Chief Financial Officer is significant. His background at Macquarie in infrastructure finance and his recent role as Chief Capital Officer at IREN give him the right skill set to manage billions in assets and ambitious capital projects. For investors, that adds confidence that the growth plan is executable. Now, let's talk about today's move specifically. Why did IREN jump 4% while other names in the sector were more muted? Part of it is the macro tailwind. The Fed cut rates, and that gave the whole market a boost. But part of it is also technical. IREN has been building momentum ever since it cleared $35. That level was strong resistance for weeks. Once it broke, it became support. And with each day that IREN holds above 35, confidence builds. When you have strong support below and macro tailwinds above, the path of least resistance is higher. Add to that the positioning dynamic. Short interest remains around 12% afloat. That's not extreme, but it's enough to fuel rallies when shorts are forced to cover. The options market has been heavily skewed toward calls. Earlier in August, we saw unusually high options activity flagged, with call volumes surging. That means when the stock moves up, dealers and traders often chase, creating feedback loops. Today's rally likely had that element as well, not just fundamental buyers, but positioning dynamics adding fuel. What's especially interesting is the aftermarket. Often when a stock has a big day, You'll see it fade after the close as traders lock in profits. But IREN is showing initial strength in the aftermarket session. That suggests buyers are still interested, even after a 4% rally. That's not something you see every day. Aftermarket strength can sometimes foreshadow follow-through into the next session. Now, let's be clear. This stock has run a long way in a short amount of time. It was trading under $6 not that long ago. Now it's flirting with 40. That's a six-fold increase in a matter of months. At some point, consolidation is natural. Profit-taking is natural. You don't go up every day. So, investors need to respect the volatility. But the fact that after all of that, IREN is still powering higher and still attracting aftermarket interest is a sign of underlying strength. What are the risks here? First, execution risk. It's one thing to deploy GPUs. It's another to monetize them. AI customers are critical. IREN needs to demonstrate that the AI cloud business can grow from millions in revenue to hundreds of millions. Second, power costs. With nearly 3 gigawatts of renewable power lined up, IREN is well positioned, but energy costs remain a factor, especially for the mining side. Third, macro uncertainty. The Fed may have cut rates today, but inflation could flare up again, or economic conditions could change, forcing them to slow or pause future cuts. That could shift sentiment quickly. And fourth, valuation. With a stock that's run six-fold in a year, expectations are high. Any stumble could lead to sharp pullbacks. So, how should investors frame today's move? I'd say this: today was about confirmation. The Fed rate cut gave the market a tailwind. IREN used that tailwind to confirm its breakout, adding 4% to close at 37.90. The aftermarket strength adds another layer of confirmation, showing that demand isn't just an intraday phenomenon. It's carrying into the evening, and that often means institutions are still buying. What should we watch next? First, GPU deployment updates. Every time IREN energizes more GPUs, it validates the AI thesis. Second, AI cloud customer wins. The market wants to see that those GPUs are being monetized with enterprise clients. Third, mining performance. Hash rate, margins, and Bitcoin price remain critical for the cash flow engine. Fourth, analyst coverage. As more analysts initiate or upgrade coverage, it builds credibility and draws in new pools of capital. Fifth, technical levels. 35 remains support. Resistance is now in the high 30s to low 40s. If IREN can establish a base above 37.50, it could open the door to a run into the 40s. Let's also circle back to the big picture. Eric Jackson has laid out one of the boldest theses on IREN, projecting $100 in 18 months and as much as $300 long-term. Whether or not those exact numbers play out, the underlying idea is that the market is re-rating IREN. It's no longer just a Bitcoin miner. It's a renewable-powered AI infrastructure provider. That's a completely different multiple, a completely different growth story. Today's action fits right into that narrative. The market rewarded IREN not just because of the Fed cut, but because investors increasingly believe in that re-rating story. To wrap it all up, IREN closed Wednesday at $37.90, up 4% on the day. The Fed rate cut provided a macro boost. The company's fundamentals, record earnings, Nvidia partnership, GPU expansion, mining cash flow, remain intact. Positioning added fuel, with shorts and options traders likely contributing to the upside. And the stock showed aftermarket strength, a sign that demand remains strong. The risks are still there: execution, energy costs, macro uncertainty, but the long-term thesis of IREN as a re-rated AI infrastructure leader continues to gather momentum. So, is today's move just another rally, or is it confirmation of something bigger? I'd argue it's confirmation. The breakout is holding. The demand is real. And as long as IREN continues to execute, the market may just be getting started with this re-rating.